The Mountain West might be trying to play hardball with the Pac-12, and I don't think it's going to matter.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and more. We've always got you covered. This episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Plenty of sights and sounds from the final day of SEC Media Days coming up later on today's show. We'll talk Arkansas, we'll talk Auburn, but first, we're talking the Mountain West and the Pac-12 because a report came out from Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports, who is here this week at SEC Media Days, and he had a piece about how the Mountain West might not actually want to add Oregon State and Washington State one day. And the reason I don't think that matters a whole heck of a lot is the Pac-12 has been clear, and the reporting on the matter has been rather clear, that their stated desire is to rebuild the conference and to make it into a new league. So if the Mountain West doesn't want to add them one day, that's an option. As long as Oregon State would be able to keep the war chest they got from the departing Pac-12 schools, the 10 schools that went to the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12, as long as they get to keep that money, then sure, in theory, they could become members of the Mountain West one day. That's a back burner idea. That's not a front of mind option for Oregon State and Washington State. But what is the rebuild of the league. But another option could be a reverse merger. That's also an option that has reportedly not been preferred, but is on the table. There's a possibility of it. And so the Mountain West putting out a report right now that kind of makes it appear that they're playing more hardball with Oregon State and Washington State, or they want to, and they want to be more forceful and aggressive about what they're able to do as a conference to ensure their own viability and their own success going forward. I don't think it's going to matter a whole heck of a lot, because if Oregon State and Washington State are able to make a strong enough pitch to the best of the Mountain West and they get them to come over, why would those Mountain West teams stay in that conference? Who would you rather be affiliated with? Let's say, just hypothetically, the Pac-12 is going to get to 8 schools, as Oregon State Athletic Director Scott Barnes has indicated previously. He feels it's a number that keeps them nimble and allows them to have a variety of options. Let's say they're going to get to 8 schools by 2026, not 2025. 2026. That's when the Pac-12 has to have at least 8 schools in its conference, or else it dissolves as a formal and legal entity. If they do that, and they just get Mountain West schools, nobody from the American, nobody from the Sun Belt, no independents, nothing, no ACC leftovers, if it's just Mountain West schools, then your top options would likely be, in no particular order, Boise State, okay, that'd be the number 1 option, San Diego State, okay, that'd be number 2, now in no particular order, Fresno State, Air Force, Colorado State, UNLV. Those would be the 6 best options. You can make a case for Wyoming, but Air Force would be far more likely to be added to the league than Wyoming. So if those are the 6 schools with Oregon State and Washington State, if you are those 6 Mountain West schools, what is your incentive to stay in the Mountain West? Because those 2 leagues will now be competing for Fox and CBS's attention to get a media rights contract. What's the more attractive league? Those 6 schools plus Oregon State and Washington State, or a league that is now headlined, with Mountain West remainders by Wyoming, San Jose State, Nevada, Utah State, New Mexico, and I'm missing somebody in there, but at Hawaii for football. That's not close. These 2 things are not on the same footing. The new look Pac-12 would win that discussion every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So the question then becomes, how appealing is that sort of option for the Mountain West schools? And one idea that's been thrown around, I got a direct DM about this, and I almost said direct message. It sounded like a really, really old guy. And as you can see by looking at me on YouTube, I'm really not. So I got a message about this with regards to an idea that got tossed around, I think, by just some administrator at Boise State and hasn't gained a ton of traction necessarily, but has been discussed the idea of a relegation model, not nationally for college football, which I think could be really, really great for the sport, but is nowhere close to implementation, but the idea of a relegation model between the Mountain West and the Pac-12. I think the idea is highly intriguing. I think relegation adds a lot of juice to games and as television products that they don't currently have or don't always have. However, in this particular instance, I don't know that it would be a saving grace to get these conferences to work together, because if you're the 6 premier schools that are in the Pac-12, what incentive do you have to try and get other schools up to that level? Now, should you be worried about it? Not particularly. If you're Boise State, you should never fall down to the Mountain West with the schools that are down there compared to the schools that are in the Pac-12. But is there a big enough of a difference? Can you create and foster enough of a financial incentive with a television partner to make that sort of league work that has San Jose State and New Mexico and Utah State and all sorts of other schools that would have been left behind and would get labeled with that sort of brand? I don't know that you can. So the Mountain West is in a spot where they're trying to ensure that all their teams stay together. That's their ideal scenario. If the Pac-12 wants to, though, and if the schools have a sufficient desire, there's nothing the Mountain West can do, which is why I said at the top of the show, I don't think it matters what the Mountain West thinks. Or if the Mountain West doesn't want to, schedule games with Oregon State and Washington State next year, yeah, that could make it really, really rough. That's the bargaining chip that Oregon State and Washington State have to go up against, that the Mountain West has, is they could say, we have a mutual agreement to have a scheduling alliance in football in the 2025 college football season. They're already doing it for 2024, but if the Mountain West senses that Oregon State and Washington State are circling like vultures and are getting ready to poach teams over to their league, they might say, yeah, we're not obliged to give you anything here, and we're not going to offer you membership, which is not what Oregon State and Washington State really would want anyway. But we're going to go back on the 2025 deal. You figure out your own schedule and you find 7 college football games. Okay, that's a bargaining chip. What do you think Oregon State and Washington State do if you do that? Like that feels like a red line point of no return if you're the Mountain West. Because the relationship between these two leagues, Gloria Nevarez has a history in the Pac-12, and she and Teresa Gould know each other, but they also understand the landscape that you have to act in the best interest of your league, even if it's not always in the best interest of your friends or people or schools that you like, or keeping traditions intact that have been in place for decades or hundreds of years. So that's a really, really difficult spot for the Pac-12 and the Mountain West to be in, the Mountain West specifically, because if you make that aggressive play, then the Pac-12 might get ticked off and say, okay, we're gonna go lobby hard to get your best schools. We're gonna disrupt your league and threaten its existence because you have now put us in a bad situation. So that's the line that these commissioners are trying to walk. And I understand the Mountain West putting this out, maybe just kind of as some PR cover, as to remind people we're still a good league, we're still a strong league. I did disagree with something Dennis Dodd said, who I actually met earlier this week at Media Days, and he does a great job covering this stuff. Of course, he said the Mountain West is the best Group of 5 league in the country. Right now, I don't know that is necessarily true. Like, when you compare it to the American or the Sun Belt, you might have a stronger depth of teams in the Mountain West slightly, but those 3 leagues, I think, are in a really similar place. Their conference champion could have 2 or maybe even 3 losses, depending on the schedule, and like a 10-3 Boise State, for instance, that's probably the highest-ranked Group of 5 conference champion. But a 10-3 Tulane, a 10-3 Memphis, a 10-3 James Madison, the Sun Belt depends on how a couple things work out with schools and the strength of that league, but certainly it's going to be a competitive conference title race. I don't think the Mountain West is head and shoulders above those other leagues, but any sort of arrangement with Oregon State and Washington State, even if it's just a scheduling alliance, is good for the Mountain West to separate itself from those other 2 conferences and get a team into the playoff, which is what these commissioners are going to be valuing above all else. So that's the latest on that front. Curious to see if any developments follow over the weekend. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Sam Pittman over at Arkansas. We're going back to the SEC since I'm here at SEC Media Days, and Yeah, he might be under as much, if not more, pressure than any coach in the SEC. We'll react to his comments from his press conference coming up next. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They've got all sorts of things to help you out over there at Game Time. They have last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., whatever you're looking for. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Sam Pittman took the stage at SEC Media Days. That is John Nabors, Locked On Razorbacks, joining me here on the show. Let's start with Arkansas's head coach. Going into year number 5, trending down a little bit the last couple record-wise. How much pressure is he on to win this year?
I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the SEC that's got more pressure than Sam Pittman on it. I mean, you can't go from 9-4 to 7-6 to 4-8 and expect people to just be like, oh, no, everything's fine. So people wanted him fired after last year, and I was one of those that felt like, hey, if they made the move, then it's the right move. But his saving grace, or saving his bacon, pardon the pun, has been literally getting Bobby Petrino back. And because of that fact, that's at least provided some excitement. But I'm going to be honest, I can't remember a time, and growing up as a Razorback fan and being in Arkansas, where there's been less excitement from the fan base for a football season than what they're seeing right now.
When you look at their schedule and how it shakes out, Sam Pittman said earlier today, we have to play those teams, but all those teams have to play the University of Arkansas as well. And that's certainly what you'd want to hear from your head coach, but
sure,
it's definitely more of an Arkansas has to play X, Y, and Z than X, Y, and Z have to play Arkansas. What number of wins this year do you think makes Sam Pittman the head coach of Arkansas football in 2025?
I think at minimum he's got to get to 7-5. Because even if you go 6-6, yeah, it gets into a bowl game. But if it sets you up and you go 6-7, it's like you really feel good about still had a losing season, even though bowl games aren't as what they used to be. But I think 7-5 at least is going to provide, all right, well, you got at minimum 3 SEC wins, assuming you beat Oklahoma State. But even if you didn't beat Oklahoma State, you get 4 SEC wins. So that at least gets you back on track, back into the right trajectory and everything. But, I still don't know if, Sam Pittman may get to the point where he's just like, I want to retire. I mean, he's been 5 years. He's getting to that point. He said this is his last job. Wouldn't surprise me at all if that happened, even after a good season. But I think, to me, at least, to provide fans with some sort of hope, it's got to be at least a 7-5 season.
Yeah, I think the pressure scale is probably highest for him. Maybe Clark Lee at Vanderbilt as well.
Or Napier, maybe.
Napier, I don't know. I think the pressure's there for Napier to have a solid year.
Right.
But 4-8 could actually see Billy Napier come back to Gainesville next year. 4-8 for Sam Pittman.
He ain't now.
And he's not going to be the head coach, and the coaching search will definitely be on. But how feasible do you think that 7-5 mark is, or a 7-6 mark after a 6-6 regular season with this Arkansas team, what they've done in the offseason? Sam Pittman says he feels good. He said he felt confident. Of course, every coach is going to project that, right? Because there's nothing else that you should project as a head coach of a football program. What do you think this team can accomplish?
I think that given the schedule, it's just no easy schedule in the SEC, but this is an easier schedule than Arkansas's had in a long time because they have 4 home games against Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, and Texas. Well, they only have 3 true road games against Mississippi State, Auburn, and Missouri.
It's not a bad road schedule.
Not at all. And then you have the game in Arlington against A&M, which they never win, but still, you got a nice setup to where you don't have Georgia on your schedule, you don't have Alabama on your schedule. I know it's without Nick Saban, but then your toughest games are at home, for what it's worth. So, given that, it's that Oklahoma State game, week 2 is going to be the biggest one on the road. If you win that game, if you're 3-0 going into that game against Auburn on the road, I think that there's no reason why Arkansas doesn't go 6-6, 7-5. But if you lose that and you're 1-2, people are jumping ship. People are like, this ain't it. This ain't working. There's no energy. And it'd just be really hard to get the team back. So, no, I think it's feasible. I think Arkansas is set up to go 6-6. But It's going to be about how they do against that team in Stillwater against Oklahoma State. If they win, great. If not, it's going to be a long year.
When you listed off those home games against Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and the fourth one is just
LSU.
and LSU, feels like for Arkansas to have the sort of season that they want, that Sam Pittman might need, I feel like they got to get one of those. They have to find a way, because it's in Fayetteville, and no, they're not going to win all of them. Obviously, if they win 2 of them, I think they'd be doing great.
Yeah.
That might be asking too much of this Arkansas team, but still, feels like you have to get at least one, because going 0-4 in those big games, even if you have maybe a 5-7, 6-6 year, that can still ratchet up the pressure, because at least amongst the fan base, because then they're coming to games in Fayetteville and they're like, well, we're not beating anybody good, so how close are we really to get into an SEC championship? Sam Pittman, he had a number of very funny remarks today. I think he had the most laughs of any coach so far at SEC Media Days this week, and he was asked about the 12-team playoff and, what are you going to do to get your program there? And he said, I'm just trying to make the damn SEC championship game, But if you're going to get to that level, you have to be able to beat those teams at some point.
Yeah, and I think that as weird as it is, like Arkansas, when they played Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, especially at home, they've done really well. Like, Arkansas's dominated Ole Miss when Lane Kiffin's been there in the past 2 times they played in Fayetteville. And even on the times they played on the road, 2021, Arkansas lost where they scored a touchdown at the very end of regulation, and they went for 2 because they just wanted to win it, and they didn't get it. And that was against a team that went 10-2 in Ole Miss. And then last year, Arkansas defensively was great against them, going to Oxford at night and lost by a touchdown. It was still a really close game, a lot of people thought. So there's something about Ole Miss that Arkansas just either beats handedly or it's a close game. And so I like their matchup in that. The Tennessee one's kind of fascinating because Arkansas hasn't played Tennessee a whole lot. At least they haven't played Jeremy Pruitt yet. And offensively, they're going to be.
You mean
really
Josh
good.
Heupel?
Or Josh Heupel, excuse me. Yeah, not Jeremy Pruitt. I forgot.
That's why we do segments together, folks.
That's right. That was the last time they played each other was Jeremy Pruitt. But yeah, Josh Heupel. So that'll be interesting to see. But also, here's the thing too: is not only those home games that they have a good start, but they have Arkansas gets a bye week before LSU and before Texas. So not saying that they're going to beat those 2 teams, but those are, to me, the 2 toughest opponents you have at home. And at least with those, you get a bye week going into those.
Sam Pittman talked about the transfer portal additions that his team has made this offseason. Taylon Green draws the most attention, of course, because he's the quarterback. He's coming in to replace KJ Jefferson, comes over from Boise State. Pittman said they have a lot of the same qualities and that he can run the offense that they need. That, time will tell along those lines. I think Taylon Green is solid. I think if he becomes what KJ Jefferson was, that's kind of the upper end of what he has. Maybe he's got a little bit more arm talent, but I think overall they're fairly similar players. But I want to talk about the other transfer portal players. 4 new offensive linemen that Sam Pittman highlighted in his opening remarks here at Media Days. What do you make of kind of the rest of the roster around Taylon Green, specifically that O-line?
Well, it's going to come down to the O-line because I think skill position player-wise, Arkansas is in great shape. I mean, they have all the wide receivers back from last year, which I don't think got a fair shake because the offense was so bad, but they have talent there. They have Luke Haas, who was a freshman tight end last year. If he didn't break his collarbone, he was on his way to be maybe freshman of the year. Like, he was that good, and he's going to be that good. And then they have some running backs, and Jaquindon Jackson's been a great transfer from Utah.
That's a good football player.
Yeah, he's really good.
That is a good physical football player.
I'm excited to see him play. So you have skill guys, but it comes down to the O-line. But they changed coaches, and they added those guys, and I've been really impressed by them. I mean, Josh Braun's really been the leader of the team from the past year's team, but Fernando Carmona, Addison Nichols, you're talking about 2 guys that were highly regarded coming out of the transfer portal. Addison Nichols coming from Tennessee. He started on the team last year. Like, he's got SEC experience. You throw in Keith Blackstock, who's from Michigan State, that transferred into. He's going to be a big addition there. And I heard Pittman talk about Kudus, Patrick Kudus. He's one of the best players we got. He just lost his confidence last year. So I think offensive line, they're going to be vastly improved. If they're vastly improved, the offense is going to go. Because that's all. I mean, we all know it starts up front. Well, if Arkansas has an up front offensive line, Taylon Green's going to be great. Wide receiver's going to be great. Running back's going to be great. Bobby Petrino's offense is going to be great.
Yeah, I think the backfield of Taylon Green and Jaquindon Jackson, it's
gnarly.
Among the best quarterback running back tandems when you're talking about formulating a ground game. That has to make an offensive line coach like Sam Pittman really happy.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing is you got the pieces there. You really do. It's just, and that's why Sam Pittman in spring ball, when they branched off to have position drills and whatnot, Sam Pittman always was with the offensive line and Eric Mateos. Like, they are, I don't know if it's going to equate to anything, But they are working their tails off to make sure that offensive line is good to go, because Sam Pittman got embarrassed last year by the offensive line play. He said it. He's like, oh, that's embarrassing and it can't happen. And so he has done, give him credit where credit is due. He's at least put in the effort in the offseason to make sure that he's doing everything he can to make it better. I think it will be better. But again, you're in the SEC. You could be better, but it doesn't mean you're going to be better than the opponent you're going up against.
John Nabors, Locked On Razorbacks. John, appreciate the time.
As always, man, appreciate you.
Still plenty more coming. Hugh Freeze spoke at SEC Media Days. What do you have to say? How well can he actually do this year? Are they a better team? They should be, at least on paper. We'll talk about that. What did Hugh Freeze say at SEC Media Days? Cam Berry, Sports Call Auburn, joining me here on the show. Had some technical issues with Zac Blackerby of Locked On Auburn, but Cam, appreciate you pinch hitting here. So one thing that really stood out to me when Hugh Freeze took the stage was his desire to highlight the running game and what that can be for Auburn this year. He said it starts with Jarquez Hunter, but it doesn't end there. Talked about the offensive line a little bit. How good can this running game be for the Tigers?
I mean, the running game has been consistently really, really good. You know, just in the past, obviously, Auburn has a lot of running backs that have been pretty good. Jarquez Hunter could easily be one of the top running backs in the SEC. And then you already have guys like Damari Alston behind him, and then also Jeremiah Cobb. They have a room that is full of talent, you know, if the passing game can really get going, the run game can be extremely opened up.
Yeah, I think the ground game, you know, Hugh Freeze talked about the importance of it and said, yeah, you have to run the ball to win in this conference, to not just to win championships, but to win games, period. And we'll get into Auburn's schedule here in just a moment, but you know, Peyton Thorne going into his last year of college football, I think we have a really good idea of what he is and what he isn't. He's not going to be someone that is an all-conference player in the SEC. He's not going to be a Heisman finalist. He's not going to put up crazy numbers or anything like that, but he can be a reason that you win the game or a reason that you don't lose the game, which is sometimes all you need from a quarterback. Just go out there, 240, 250, 2 touchdowns, maybe an interception. But if you're just solid, steady, consistent, he can be that sort of guy. We saw that at Michigan State when he had a great running game, which is what I think, you know, places the importance of this ground game on Auburn's offense this year.
Yes, 100%. That year too in Michigan State for him, he really threw for I think it was 3,500 yards, and was really, the offense looked really, really cohesive. I think Michigan State ended up winning 10 games because of it, and they were really, really solid and consistent. I think going into year 2 with Hugh Freeze calling the plays as well, I think that will help with Peyton Thorne and just having that consistency, that cohesiveness with him and Derek Nix calling those plays and just working together hand in hand. I think especially, you know, Peyton Thorne coming in, you know, in the spring last year, just kind of behind the power curve. He wasn't 100% the guy. You know, the confidence wasn't fully instilled in him. I think now that he has that confidence and really Hugh Freeze has endorsed him time and time again, that he's saying, hey, Peyton Thorne's my guy. I'm riding with him. I think that he can give us a great ability to win games.
Yeah, and Peyton Thorne has brought in some new weapons this year. He talked about having those weapons earlier today.
You know, we've gotten a lot of routes in together, but we've also just been hanging out. It's been great to get to know each other, and you know, obviously with 3 of our 4 Cam's not transfer, but Cam plus, you know, our 3 other transfers, I only really knew one of them, and Sam Jackson, and so getting to know the rest of those guys has been great. Hanging out after we throw and just, you know, talking and, you know, having a good time. So it's been good. I feel like we're at a good spot right now, and we're going to continue that trajectory as we get into camp here soon. Yeah, he's even better than I thought he was, and I thought he was good when he got here. And so, you know, obviously I watched his film, I watched his highlights and stuff before he got here. You can only see so much of that when you're watching film and practice highlights and whatnot. But he's been great. I feel like he's a little bit bigger than you'd expect. He's not small by any means. He's probably a good 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", and he can run. And then for me, it's his releases. You know, when he gets pressed off the line, I feel great with him getting where he wants to go. And his start-stop is really good, too. He's a really polished receiver. I think our running back room is loaded. I think, obviously, it starts with Jarquez, and he's got a lot of games under his belt and has done a lot of good things on the field. Damari has done the same thing. He presents a very good skill set, and then Jeremiah Cobb is a stud as well that you guys didn't get to see much last year, but he's really special. And so I feel confident with any three of those guys out there. They're all willing to block. They're all obviously really good with the ball in their hands. They can all catch. And so we can do different things with those guys. And our guys up front have been working their butt off.
Hugh Freeze was downplaying his ability to be a successful recruiter in the transfer portal, right, and was very pointed with his comments. He was asked a question that eventually became a question. The guy asked it kind of, he was setting stuff up. He was 15 seconds into it, and Coach Freeze was looking at him like, is there a question in there somewhere, anywhere? But the point got to be about high school versus transfer portal recruiting. Hugh Freeze says, I'm not the best transfer portal recruiter. Certainly he's a good high school recruiter. I think we have seen that play out, but I think there are a lot of really notable transfer additions on this Auburn team, and I think what he's doing there is what a lot of coaches do, which is they understand where their fan base's mindsets are at collectively. Yes, they want the best roster available, but a lot of old school fans especially, they don't want you to be a big portal team. No. They don't want you to just disregard high school recruiting and not give young kids a chance to play. They want that traditional homegrown development feel. So I think he was playing into that, and I think there is an element of, this isn't a portal-heavy team, right, but certainly there are some important transfer pieces for Auburn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You add in the wide receiver from Penn State, and he's a big addition just in general.
Yeah, Keandre Lambert-Smith.
Yes, Keandre Lambert-Smith.
Football player.
Just a great addition to the wide receiver room that really just got completely revamped in total, not even just from the addition of the high school talent that he added, but, adding in Lambert-Smith as well as the wide receiver from Georgia State, Robert Lewis as well, two guys that have experience in college football already, and then they'll help grow the young guys as well that he's adding into the room. So that, not to mention, just the defensive line that he's added. He added a lot of safeties as well, just a couple safeties as well, the guy from Texas as well, to just help supplant the defense after you lost some guys as well to the NFL draft. So yeah, he's kind of here and there touched around and added some guys in the portal, and I think that it's going to have that experience that he really wants while he lets his young guys grow.
Another topic that came up during his press conference was the schedule. It is a very unique schedule for Auburn. 5 straight games at home. Not 1, not 2, which is how many titles the Heatles actually won. Not 3, not 4, not 5. Yes, 5. 5 consecutive home games to begin the year. Yeah. He talked about it as, something unfortunate for fans, and my first reaction was, well, what are you talking about? They get to go to a game every week. But then I thought about it like, well, they don't get any time off. Yeah. And like being a fan, like not everybody can go all the time. Right. Then you're going to go the entire month of October and not play a game. Yeah. And not play a game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I think it highlights the importance, particularly with the Oklahoma and the Cal games that are going to be the toughest of the bunch, to get off to a hot start. If Auburn's going to win 7 or 8 games this year, or push for 9, which I think is tough, but I think 8's very doable. If they're going to do that, they can't start any worse than 4-1.
Yeah, no worse than 4-1, and obviously that Oklahoma game, that fifth game is going to be huge. That is the biggest game leading up, and if you can really win that Oklahoma game and really have at least general success, that's going to be the tough one, of course. Oklahoma, I don't think they've seen an environment like Jordan-Hare Stadium. It really is different.
They've gone to play Texas.
Yeah, I get you.
Red River's still unique.
Right,
Red River's unique.
Exactly, it's very unique. Where you have 85 some odd fans coming in, yelling at you, screaming at you. It's going to be very interesting how Oklahoma handles that pressure. But if you're Auburn, you come in, you're at home, you have this new opponent that you've never faced in this environment. You have to capitalize on that if you're Auburn. You got to be able to do that. If you can start off 5-0, and even if you don't win that game against Oklahoma, 4-1, that's a critical stretch, because then you have, like you said, an entire month where you're not at home. You got to try and see if you can win some of those away games, at least a couple. You're going to Mizzou, you're going to Kentucky. The one at Lexington is the one that's the most winnable. Obviously, going to Athens, Georgia's going to be tough. Of course, that's going to, and Auburn has not. I
think everybody understands.
Right,
that's
Auburn has not won in Athens since the '90s, so it's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah.
You just don't even really want to talk about that one too much. But you going to a very good Mizzou team, I will say, and who is continuing off what they had last season, and then you have a team going against in Kentucky that should be a winnable game, you feel like. And going from there, you then have a few more games at home, and then you have the Iron Bowl. So it's a favorable schedule, in all honesty. I think 9 games is feasible. I think it's possible.
Possible.
I do think it's possible.
10 is not.
I don't think 10 is impossible either. But this is if everything is hitting on all cylinders. Everything looks as well as
the reason I say
hear what you're saying.
the reason I'd say 10 is not possible is at Bama, at Georgia.
Of course.
I think that's 0-2.
Right,
I think that is set in stone. So then you'd have to
two.
be perfect elsewhere.
Right.
I know you got 5 straight at home, but even if you do that, you have to win at Kentucky, at Missouri, and at home against Texas A&M. That's a game that Auburn probably feels like they should win, and I think they're capable of. But it's a should win, not a will win.
Absolutely.
They will, I believe, win week 2 when Cal comes down. Won't be easy, but I think they will get that. Yeah. They will get that victory done, but. That's just it's asking a lot,
tough.
But it's why I think 8.
I
think 8 is I think the win total on FanDuel is 7.5. I think that's an appropriate spot.
Yeah,
that to me is a perfect number because of what Auburn has at home early. They can kind of front load those wins. But even if you pencil in those 2. With Georgia and Alabama, those are very clearly their toughest games because Missouri on the road, it's going to be hard, but that's a game I can see Auburn winning.
Yeah.
Like like Kentucky, I look at the Kentucky, Missouri, and Texas A&M games all the same from Auburn's standpoint. If you told me right now they win any of them, I'm not shocked. If you told me right now they lose any of them, I'm not shocked.
Right.
I think those are
toss-up games.
I think those are coin flip games.
Yeah, very, very toss-up games. I do agree with you. It just depends on how Auburn looks at that point in the season, right? I feel like then we can kind of see. Once you go into that 5-0, I know that they'll all be at home, but you'll still understand kind of what Auburn looks like at that point in time, and then you'll see how everything plays out. Obviously, like we said, you go from that game going against Oklahoma, then you go to Georgia. Again, you just kind of want to see if you can have some cohesiveness against Georgia.
Yeah.
Not even expectations to win the game.
No.
If you can just move the ball, then you're like, okay, then going against
Moral
Kentucky,
victories are going to be in play.
Exactly. Going against Kentucky, going against Missouri, then you feel a lot more confident in those potential games. So I think 8 is a good number. I agree with you. I do think 8's a good number. I feel as though Hugh Freeze has to win 8 games just to feel like they can really continue just what they're trying to build there. I think 8 is the next step because they did struggle so much. I think 8 will just kind of keep away the fires of, the Hugh Freeze hot seat talks and things along the lines of. I'm telling you, man.
I know. Fans.
It will very much be there, but
like
I think the upward momentum is definitely there. I think it's highly possible, and I do think 8 wins is a good number.
I think they're a better team in 2024. It's just a question of how much and how that plays out with 100%. The record. Cam Berry, Sports Call Auburn, my man. Coming in clutch, saving the bacon a little bit here to wrap up today's show. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a great weekend and a wonderful rest of your day.